Hallå, hallå säger jag. Välkomna hit allihopa till den här kvällen. Jag heter Lars Adaktusson och är ordförande i vänskapsförbundet Sverige-Israel. Vi är inne i en intressant fas när det gäller vänskapsförbundet. Vi arbetar, som många av er vet, för dels en mer balanserad bild av Israel i Sverige. Inte minst i mediesammanhang men också i politiska sammanhang. Vi arbetar också självklart för, och har gjort de senaste åren, för återupprättade relationer bilateralt mellan Sverige och Israel. Vi har ju tyvärr en situation där Sverige är det land i Europa som på senare år kanske har haft de allra sämsta relationerna med Mellanösterns enda demokrati. Och det där vill vi ändra på som vänskapsförbund. Vi vill lyfta fram det faktum att Israel är ett fantastiskt land och att det ligger också i vårt intresse från svensk sida att ha goda och väl relationer med Israel. Vi är inne i en intressant utveckling som jag sa, och det visar sig på flera sätt, inte minst, vilket är fantastiskt roligt, att medlemsantalet i vänskapsförbundet ökar stadigt. Vi har fördubblat vårt medlemsantal det senaste 1,5 året drygt, vilket är värt en applåd. Och är det så att det finns personer här ikväll, några av er som ännu inte är medlemmar, så hoppas jag att ni vill bli det och teckna ett medlemskap i vänskapsförbundet. Vi har ju ett spännande och aktuellt tema att diskutera ikväll. Det handlar om islamism och hoten mot Israel. Israels säkerhetssituation är ju unik. Inte bara när det gäller Mellanöstern utan också om man ser globalt ut över världen. Israel är omgivet av 500 miljoner människor, 1,5 miljard människor som lever i mer eller mindre brutala diktaturer. Plus ett stort antal av världens mer eller mest brutala terrororganisationer. Hamas i Gaza, Hezbollah i Libanon, IS i Syrien och Al-Qaida och Al-Nusra-fronten i Sinai. Det här är ett existentiellt hot mot Israel. Många av de här terrororganisationerna och länderna runt Israel förenas i en sak, i ett mål, och det är att utplåna staten Israel. Där ska vi tala om hur ser hoten ut och vad innebär hoten, de islamistiska hoten mot Israel för oss i Europa, för oss i Sverige. Vi vet ju att islamism också är någonting som vi konfronteras med i allt högre utsträckning i vårt land. Enligt Säkerhetspolisen så är islamismen idag det största och allvarligaste säkerhetshotet mot Sverige. Det är inte jag som säger det, det är Säkerhetspolisen som säger det. Och det har också belagts i studier ifrån Försvarshögskolan, ifrån Myndigheten för samhällsskydd och beredskap och så vidare. Det här är en verklighet som måste adresseras och som vi måste våga tala om. Och det är det vi vill göra ikväll med de eminenta gäster som vi har och också med er. Det kommer att finnas möjlighet för er att ställa frågor och vara med i diskussionen. Så återigen, mycket välkomna hit. Roligt att se så många samlade. Och nu ska jag ge ordet till Vänskapsförbundets ordförande i Stockholm, Maria Alkiewicz. Varsågod.
Innan vi börjar vill jag hälsa er välkomna från Stockholm och särskilt de som har hjälpt till och gjort det här seminariet möjligt. Det är Kristina Rundqvist, det är Mohammed Fred Saberi och Cooltv, Lawrence Berger, som alltid ställer upp och gör det möjligt att spela in de här. Jättetack, och det är Kristin som tar över som moderator. Tack.
Jag hade tänkt att prata lite om Israels läge, men det har redan Lars gjort. Så då tänkte jag börja med att berätta att Teheran hade en stor internationell konferens i veckan. Och då berättade Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, eller hur man uttalar det, att han är absolut inte en antisemit. Att han vill utplåna Israel har inget med judarna att göra, utan det har med den sionistiska staten. Så han är absolut inte antisemit, och det är ju skönt att höra. Man tror man är på rolig halvtimme eller någonting. Och varför jag tar upp Iran, det är för att Irans ekonomi har nu rasat. Det vet ni kanske, den rasar, den är en skräpvaluta. Nu har den i år, säger IMF, kommer den att gå ner med 9%. Om man ställer det mot Israel som har ökat och ökat, så är de tvåa i år, ökar med 4%. Det är värt en applåd, tycker jag. Den här situationen har då gjort att mullorna i Iran har bestämt att nu ska folket betala, för de har ju fullt upp med att betala all terror som de då betalar för runt om. De är ju världens värsta terrorstat. Så nu har man då till exempel höjt bensinpriset, så 60 liter får man betala dubbelt för. Allt över det får man betala 300% för. Därför ser ni ju nu att det är väldigt mycket, det är ju inte demonstrationer, utan folk är ju jätteledsna, tokiga, trötta. De vill leva som vi och de får inte. Och därför är de ute på gator och torg. De har stängt ner internet, men vad jag har hört från Fred nu så är det väl på gång att det via en annan stor makt kommer att öppna sig, så att de kommer att få internet via luften på något sätt. Jag är inte så hemma på tekniken, men det är i alla fall läskigt. Jag ska bara se. Den här veckan så gjorde också, för ni vet ju att det har skjutits då 450 missiler ifrån Gaza, och det har skjutits också ifrån Syrien. Det svaret kom i morse, väldigt tidigt i morse, mot Damaskus. Men nu har då palestinska islamiska jihad gjort upp med Hamas. De ska vara kompisar nu, för de har ett gemensamt mål att utplåna Israel. Man vet också från internationella underrättelser att en stor militärbas precis innanför, på syriska sidan, innanför gränsen från Irak, är klar och nästan operationell. Och de har ju mål att slå ut Israel. Vi har i veckan, tror jag det var, varit på både och träffat de viktigaste representanterna i regeringen och riksdagen för att prata om UNRWA, det som Tobias Pettersson hade seminarium om förra gången. Och vi är naturligtvis oerhört upprörda. Jag vet inte om alla ni var här, så kan jag berätta att de har skolböcker från första klass som talar om att barnen ska offra sitt blod, sitt rena blod för jorden. De ska dö i jihad och de ska få 72 jungfrur och jag vet inte allt vad det är. Och det här betalar vi, så vi är ju terrorfinansiärer. Vi betalar mest av alla, dubbelt så mycket som EU. Och man fortsätter att göra det utan en enda kondition. Vi betalar till martyrfonden som avlönar de som har dödat judar. Ju fler de har dödat, ju högre löner får de. Då kan man fråga, vad har det här med Sverige att göra? Ja, det är så att vi har också sådana böcker i Sverige. Ni kanske läste att Östhammar nu hade blivit helt chockad över den bok på farsi som är precis som de böcker som Tobias har visat. Men jag pratade med en väninna som ni alla känner, jag behöver inte gå in på vem. Hon har varit lärare ute i Rinkeby. De har hållit på i över 20 år för att få stopp på de här böckerna. Ingen gör något. Och det finns ingen tillsyn ifrån regeringen, utan man får göra som man vill. Vi har, som du pratade mycket om Lars, vi har mycket islamister här. Ni såg de här som blev dömda, skickas hem och kommer som rockstjärnor hem igen. Vi har, den här skolan ska nu läggas ner, säger man på kommunalt håll i Göteborg, Siriusskolan. Men det förekommer så mycket sånt. Jag har i 10 år hört om creeping sharia ute i förorterna. Har själv fått möta på den när Thomas och jag var ute där för många år sedan och gjorde någonting. Så att det finns mycket, och därför så tycker jag det är jätteintressant att få presentera de här. Och nu måste jag ha min telefon, för de har så fina titlar så jag kan inte dem utantill. Jag börjar med Magnus Norell. Då kan jag säga att första gången jag liksom riktigt reagerade på Magnus, då var du på ett seminarium och talade om den nya boken då, så det var 2015 gissar jag. Return to the Caliphate, eller Kalifatets återkomst. Och då frågade jag bland annat Magnus Ranstorp som var där, tycker du att det är viktigt att våra politiker, att övriga tjänstemän och vilka det nu kan vara som är beslutsfattare, att de läser den här boken och lär sig om islam? Det är essentiellt, sa han. Då frågade Paula Ternström som var moderator, hur många här har läst den? Det var inte en handfull. Hoppas det är fler nu, annars så kommer den att finnas, så vi ska berätta om vad ni köper den. Magnus Norell är adjunct scholar at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy in Washington, D.C. and senior policy advisor at the European Foundation for Democracy in Brussels. Forskare och författare till många böcker. Känn på den. Thomas Samuel kommer att hålla en föreläsning om The Fundamentalistic Group is an ideology, not a person. För vi ger oss inte efter personer och muslimer, utan vi talar om ideologier och politisk islam, så att det är klart. Och Thomas är expert på islam, han är uppvuxen i den miljön, salafist och allt vad man vill. Sen är jag faster till hans barn och det tycker jag är väldigt kul också. Och moster också för övrigt. Han kommer från Egypten och Saudiarabien där han har föreläst för hundratusentals människor om islam. Han har mycket att berätta. Han är också utbildad i psykologi och filosofi. Abdullah Bozkurt, politisk islam, a creeping threat to Europe's security, är hans tema. Abdullah är undersökande journalist specialiserad på Turkiet, politisk islam, radikalisering och författare med specialitet underrättelse, säkerhet och utrikespolitik. Driver The Nordic Research and Monitoring Network som undersöker terrorism, radikalisering, brott och militära frågor. I Ankara var han chefredaktör på Turkiets största tidning, Today's Zaman. Välkomna. I leave the floor to you.
All right. I take it that this is going to be an English language seminar. So we have been trying to figure out how to do this. And since Abdullah and Thomas is going to be more topic specific, I'll give you the overall picture, the chopper view of the Middle East. Because in one way, in one sense, the question is this a threat? Is the Israeli threat to Europe? Yeah, yes, it is. You have any questions? I'll be happy to answer. It's really, you know, that kind of topic. But let me start. Go back in a few years when the war against the Islamic State sort of was coming to an end, in the sense that the physical Islamic State was sort of destroyed, more or less. Since then, you've had a very predictable development that there are actually 4 times as many Islamic State warriors today than it was in 2014 when they established their caliphate. You didn't know that, did you? No. So, no, they haven't gone away. No, they're still there. Not in the physical sense that they had, but you know, the ideology is not defeated at all. And what you do have in connection with that is that you still have the regional power play in the Middle East. Turkey, Iran, Russia, everybody's in to get a piece of the pie here. All these issues sort of, there is a confluence here. And that affects, of course, Israel, and that affects Europe as well. In the sense that you have the returnees, as they're called. It's a major headache for every security agency in Europe, of course, and police forces. And that is an ongoing problem. And as you all can testify and see, there is no regional solution to this. There's no European Union solution to this. Not that strange, because you know different countries have different ideas on how to deal with this. But it's an ongoing problem without any clear solutions at the end of the day here. So that will be with us for some time. Regionally, though, the fact that you have created more or less a political vacuum in what used to be called Syria and parts of Iraq, you still have fighting going on. It's not over. And that means that I'll concentrate, since Abdullah is going to talk about Turkey, I was going to do that, but I'll leave that to him. But if you take Iran and Russia, major regional players here, you can see the differences, and you can see how it all affects the region, and it's all a threat to the stability of the region, of course. Russia is Russia, and Russia wants to have a few things only. You know, they want to have their bases in Syria. They want to have an access to the Mediterranean, which has been a Russian sort of idea for a couple of 100 years. And as far as they get that, as long as they get that, they are not that concerned with the, you know, with what happens in the rest of the region, as long as it doesn't blow up to full-scale war. I would argue that's what I would argue. They deal with Syria in the same way they deal with the Ukraine. You know, you push some, no one is reacting. Then you push some more. You know, you keep it festering, you keep it glowing. Not a full-scale war, but enough to, you know, have an influence. And that's the Russian strategy. You know, it's a very sort of ad hoc based strategy. Of course, and they can keep doing that for a very long time because well, there's a number of reasons for that. But the point is that it's not going to add to stabilize the region at all. On the contrary, and that's never been their aim. Iran, on the other hand, has a different take on the region. Their ambition is to become a regional power player, and that's their intent, and that's been a strategic idea in Iran for decades. And they saw the fight against the Islamic State as a very good way of gaining more influence in Syria and Iraq, of course. An Iraqi friend of mine who lives in Basra told me that you in Europe, you should look at Iraq and you see an Iranian province. It's not an independent country any longer, except maybe for the Kurdish part. But you know, it's so much attached to Iran in so many ways, it's going to be almost impossible to regain some kind of real independence, even if you wanted to, which not all Iraqis want to. You can see that now with the demonstrations and riots in Iran. You have Iranian-based and Iranian-supported militia groups trying to quell the riots, to quell the demonstrations. Same thing in actually in Lebanon, but especially specifically in Iraq. So for them, it's important to have some kind of stability in Syria. For them, it's very important to have a kind of a, it's been talked for a number of years now about this Iranian highway from Tehran to the Mediterranean. And, you know, they are well on their way to achieve that. And again, contrary to what the Russians really are after, you know, Iran really wants to have some kind of stability here to sort of gain that kind of influence. Now, all this adds to the instability of the region as a whole. It's not a contradiction in terms. Even if they want stability, it's not going to happen because, you know, there's so many other forces arranged against them. And I think sometime down the road, there's going to be some kind of clash between Russian and Iranian interests in Syria. All these are bad news for the region, for Israel, and for Europe, because it will affect us, not only through the the Islamic State returnees, but also to the fact that you have a region on our doorstep that's going to keep being very, very unstable for a very, very long time. And then I haven't even touched upon the connection, the confluence between religion and politics here. But I think my colleagues will deal with that more in detail. So this is a very bleak picture, but I'm sorry that this is the way I see it. And I think what we see today is probably what we will be seeing for a number of years to come. I don't really see enough of the euphemistically called international community doing something serious here to counter this. I just can't see that. The European Union could maybe, but there's no such thing as a common European foreign policy, even if it's used rhetorically. And that, I think, will continue to be the case. There's nothing strange with that. It's too many countries to even think about that. The US has been pulling out of the Middle East since Obama. So, you know, that's a process that's been going on for some time now. And I don't see the US coming back in a more sort of robust way. I think again, you know, it's a clear policy from Trump, you know, to get out of shady wars or whatever he's calling it, and that I think will continue. So that means that if Europe and the U.S. and the West leaves the room, you know, the bad guys will not leave the room. They're going to be there for the foreseeable future, which is all again bad news. But that's what you have. That's really, you know, the overall sort of strategic pictures I can see now. And the sad thing, of course, or the tragedy, if you like, is that we could see this coming many years ago. You know, the writing was on the wall for a very, very long time. So this is very much on us that we let this happen. I can say that to you because I wrote it so many times, so many years ago, but many more people than me did that. So it's in a way a self-inflicted tragedy going on in the Middle East right now. And on that happy note, I'll be happy to hand the microphone over to, wants to, Thomas?
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry for the picture, but this is how I see it. Very happy to be with you today. It's my honor, and it's a very interesting subject to talk about, and I hope that I will not be talkative as every time I speak, because this is me. So try to stop me whenever you feel that I talk too much. Don't feel shy about that. But actually what I will do is to put the theological background for what has been said right now and what is going to be said in a while. And that's why I prefer to speak about the subject, which is the Islam, or Islam is ideology, not a person. And this sounded so much in my ears when people started to party what they call the death of al-Baghdadi, and people started to talk about like we achieved victory. And this just reminded me again of what happened when the same news came about Osama bin Laden. But actually, when you look at what happened at Osama bin Laden and what happened now, do you think that anything changed? No, there is something changed. It became worse. If you compare, like in Egypt, we have a very popular Facebook share that people do in Egypt because, you know, we have a lot of bombs. We always like to party. But people say that we miss the time of Taliban, this moderate terroristic Islam. Because when you compare it to the Islamic State of ISIS, wow, they are moderate. They are so fun. Taliban are so gentle. So, I don't know, everything is coming in this way. Why? But it's not from my computer, I think. It just like this. So, the thing is, there is a French word say, like, to be a French, when you wear a hat and a suit like a French, speak French, eat croissant, drink cafe on a beautiful cafe in France while thinking of France or its beauty of literature, you will not be a French person. You will not be a French person. To be a French person, you need to think like a French. And I think that's the problem in every time we try to deal with the Islamic groups. Every time we try to deal with the fundamentalistic Islam, we try to look with a very blue-eyed, standing out of everything and say, No, they will not do that. Nobody do this. No. This is crucial. They are more gentle. Are they? Do you think so? I'll tell you why, because I grow there. First of all, let's start by my group. Happy to say I'm a Salafi. I came from a Salafi background. And Salafism, just a background about people who doesn't know what is Salafism. Salafism mainly are three groups inside. Internally, we are three. We are something called jihadism, educational Salafism, and something called Gami. They do not exist nowadays. These are the people who helped the king of Saudi Arabia not to be taken away. You know, they appeared and they said, no, it's forbidden to go against the king, you know. But now the king is there, so no need for that. So educational is my group. This is my family. And this is jihadism, the arm of power for the Salafist group. I dealt with them in 2003 and in Iraq. But the most important about Salafism that they take the main original word of Islam came from the inheritance. That's why this is the slogan, you know, the Quran and Sunnah according to the approach or worldview of the nation's ancestors. They try not to think. They try to apply just what has been said before. Out of the womb of Salafism, the Brotherhood came out. And they had this slogan for them. Up till today, by the way, even the organization that is supported by Brotherhood, who say that we have nothing to do with terrorism. We have nothing to do with jihad. We are a very peaceful brotherhood. Okay, ask him, what is your slogan? He will say, Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. So peaceful. They cannot, this is their slogan. This is the slogan. Go to any brotherhood supported organization, ask them what is your slogan. That's why, what is Islamization, which we hear about today? Islamization is not just making an Islamic cover for things that are still European. No, it's the process of bringing someone or something under the influence of Islam or under the Islamic law. So it's not just about some ideas, but it's about applying the Islamic ideology. That's why Hassan al-Banna and his messages, his well-known messages, books, they are everything for the brotherhood. He said, it is the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations and to extend its power to the entire planet. Someone would say, no, but these are the old days, you know, he was on the time of the English people attacking Egypt. Definitely this was his idea. Okay, Mahdi Akif, the one before the current leader of Brotherhood in Egypt, this was his words in one of the conferences. The Muslim Brotherhood is a global movement. Not Swedish. Sweden is not, has nothing to do with Egypt. No, it's one main hit court in Egypt, whose members cooperate with each other throughout the world, based on the same religious worldview, the spread of Islam until it rules the world. Okay, nothing changed, I see. Then comes the Salafi, well-known commentator. He's Saudi Arabian. His name is As-Sa'di, Al-Imam As-Sa'di. And Imam As-Sa'di was discussing a little bit what does it mean empowerment. What is the idea of empowerment? And he was saying, God promised those who came with belief and righteous and correct actions from the nation, which is the Ummah, that he would cause them to be successors upon the earth. Successors, they are the one who will be in control. So that they are the ones in authority and in charge of the affairs. Further, that he would establish their religion, that which he was pleased with for them, which is the religion of Islam, which gained ascendancy over all religions. What I want to say here, that the idea of separating the ideology and just base it on some people, and once we remove these people, the thing will be not like that, for me, it's very untrue. It's very untrue. That's why, since we were kids, we learned that no infidels, who is non-Muslim, is for me an infidel. Infidels cannot rule on a Muslim. Yeah. Can infidels rule Muslims? No. Ibn Taymiyyah, one of the best four Salafi Brotherhood groups, he said in his book, The Straight Path, chapter 1, page 182 to page 185, he used to say, and that's an evidence that infidel cannot rule on the Muslim believers in whatever place, and it is forbidden and it agreed by all imam of Muslims. Nobody. Yes, please. Sure, but what about having all the questions together in the panel? But write it down, please do that. I would like to hear it. So, and they rely in that, for example, on all these surahs, surah number 5, verse 51, surah number 5, verse 55 to 56, which mainly say you are not allowed to have Jews and Christians as allies. You cannot have them friends. And you cannot have them partners. You cannot have this type of relationship to them. It's forbidden. That's why they cannot control them, control the Muslim. And that's why this funny story happened, told by Ibn Taymiyyah, when he said, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa of Islam, was talking to another guy who got a Christian clerk. He told him, why you got a Christian clerk? Why you don't have a Muslim one? He said, I don't care. I just have his writings and he has his own religion. This was the answer of Umar. Umar said, I do not honor them after God has dishonored them. I do not cherish them after God has humiliated them. I do not get them close after God has excluded them. This was the answer of the most well-known person of fairness, being fair in the Muslim world. This will take me to the last part I will talk about. When we say you cannot separate Islam and as an ideology and politics, because simply this is the main principles or construction of the Islamic politics, which is principle of governors. It's called in Arabic al-Hakimiyya, which is that God is the only governor for everything happening. The Islamic State, which is the one who will be representing God, the Khalifa, as my brother was talking. And this Khalifa has a consultation group who must elect them. And the Sharia law, which is the book that should be applied. And the last thing is jihad, which will secure all that from happening. I don't have the time to go through all the evidences on this structure, but I just let it to be there so people understand that I'm not just saying my own opinion, but all these are just verses and commentators who is reflecting that. By the way, Sharia law, people would say, but Sharia law is not that welcomed by everyone. Like, do you think Muslims even want Sharia? There is a problem here, frankly, because psychologically he wants it. Practically he doesn't. Why? Because actually this happened in Egypt. When Brotherhood came into leadership, people went out, no, we don't want that, because this was too much for us. Because they started to say, we support Gaza, we give them the gas. I was in Egypt in that time, standing in the line of waiting to put gas in my car for 2 hours and 3 hours, because our gas was going to Gaza. And people didn't bear that. They said, no, we don't want that. However, when you look for the statistics, you find something a little bit sad. When you saw to the PAL statistics organization, you found that people around the world when they asked them, do you believe that Sharia is what you want? These are the percentages. In Egypt, happily, 74%. In Russia, 42% of Muslims asking for Sharia to be implemented. So even a statistic saying people want it, even if they cannot bear it. The last point, I just give it a little confirm. Everyone say, yeah, but jihad, jihad in the Quran is not this jihad. Jihad is against yourself, against the sin. Yeah, that's true. By the way, it's both. It's this and that. That's why when you look for the books, they say that jihad is 4 types. Ibn al-Qayyim, for example, one of the very well-known Salafi imams, he said that jihad is against self-jihad, it's against devil, it's against hypocrites, and against infidels. That's why when someone come out and say, but jihad was in the beginning of Islam, not anymore. Actually, I would say no. According to Ibn al-Qayyim as well, he's saying jihad was not permitted, then permitted, then ordered defensively, just to protect yourself, then ordered against all disbelievers, so religion will be all for God. And this is his verses that he's putting as a witness for his words. And that's why, what happened in implementation. In the time of Muhammad, the Muslims fought the total of 29 battles during the life of Prophet Muhammad, from which some were fought by Muhammad, the Prophet himself, and from which some were led or participated by Muhammad the Prophet. And then, some of the contemporary Islamic scholars say that during the 23 years of Islam, there were 29 battles, but there were 80 military expedition. And the proof on that, after Muhammad's death, 632 approximately, the apostasy wars happened 632, they took Persia 633, Damascus 635, Jerusalem 638, Egypt 640. This is history, okay? And when I tried to gather the name that I only know about the Islamic groups, I had no time to write it in English because it was too much. But this is what I have found. This is what people know, right? You know, remember this guy. This is Osama bin Laden. This is Ayman al-Zawahiri from Egypt. He was a doctor, by the way. It's not about education and ignorance, as people say. ISIS, the new model. And then I started to gather. I reached number 43, but then it was not enough. I reached number 89, then it was not enough. Then I found 124 people carrying weapons in Islam. Military groups, 124. This is what I know, and I am not proclaiming that I am the most who knows. Remember that it's not always will be this type of jihad. This was the words of Sayyid Qutb, the second man in the Brotherhood on some time, or at least he was responsible for the newspapers. And he is one of the people who supported the jihadi groups on the 80s. And he said the leading member of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood in 1950s and 60s, he was released a health pardon in May 1964. His words were, the establishment of the Islamic system calls for long efforts in education and preparation. It does not come through a coup. It's not anymore this weapon fight, but it's more into a new type of methods that we don't have actually enough time to talk about, but it's controlling mosques, changing people's way of thinking, proclaiming another, I call it the touristic brochure of fundamentalistic Islam. And the most important, and I care to close with that, they care to use the moderate Muslims, the people who are not religious, who are very normal, to get the passion of people. But once they do that, they will kick them out and they will take over. And this is what happened in Egypt. And that's what is happening all the time. Thank you. Sorry if I talk too much, but I have a lot to say about that. But I would like my brother Abdullah to continue. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thomas. My name is Abdullah Bozkurt. I'm a Turkish journalist. I've been living here for 3 years. And I'm one of the reasons why the political Islam needs to be confronted very forcefully. And that's how the political Islamist narrative, but also the policies that followed beyond that, destroyed my country. We all worry about Iran, right? And Magnus mentioned Iraq from his friend as a province of Iran. That's another worry, of course. But a very much powerful Iran is emerging out of Turkey now. When I say this, some of the people, think I may be exaggerating. No, not at all. It's been there. We haven't seen the road markers maybe enough. But when we look at back how we came here today, looking at Turkey, we miss a lot of road markers. The political Islam used to be only 5% at most in Turkish, politics. The best they can come up to the government only through, bargaining process with other parties in a coalitional government, which they did before. They were quickly expelled from the power. But now they managed to come to the government as a single party in 2002. And gradually, incrementally, they started eroding and undermining all the institutions, the secular institutions we have built in Turkey, and starting with the judiciary, with educational system, the media landscape. I may be here, but there are a lot of my friends, 181 journalists, are sitting in prison today in Turkey. This number is a top number around the world. If you combine the numbers from Iran, from Russia, from Egypt, Turkey still comes on top of that. 131 journalists are forced to move out, like myself. So this is the damage we see from Turkey. And it's a member of NATO, a lot of capabilities, capacities to inflict harm, not only to the Turkish population, but also beyond the Turkish borders. A member of the Council of Europe, trying to be a member of the European Union, and a member of G20. Can you imagine what kind of power they can pull, the political Islamist guy who sees the power in Turkey now? We have seen some indication before how, to what extent we can see the parallels between this Islamist guy in Turkey and what the mullah regime has done in Iran. They brought a lot of people who grew up in fantasizing the Islamist revolution, so-called Islamist revolution in Iran, and now they are taking over the key position in the Turkish government. Can you imagine the head of the National Intelligence Organization, Hakan Fidan, a Turkish guy, nurtured and grew up in the Shiite study circles, run by the Iranian cells in Turkey. Now he's the head of the National Intelligence Organization in Turkey. A lot of, at the ministerial level, cabinet level, senior positions are stabbed by the pro-Iranian Turkish Islamists. I was looking at an investigation file back in 2010. I realized this later, but the evidence was there. Back in 2010, 9 years from now, at the time, the NATO trying to set up a radar base in the southeast part of Turkey, close to the Iranian border, to eavesdrop the Iran and other rogue nations, as well as Russia, I suppose. And that was linked to the base in Romania and Poland. Erdogan, at the time, did not consolidate enough power in his hands. So he couldn't, refuse the offer put on the table by the Americans and all the other NATO members. But privately, he was sending a different message to his own people. In this investigation file, which is actually probed the IRGC cells in Turkey for 3 years, they managed to find out so many in the key position in the government actually cohorting and coordinating with the Iranian intelligence services, leaking the confidential information from the FBI, from the NSA, and the NATO to the other side. And in this investigation file, there was a conversation. It was, found by the investigators, the police investigators. Oops. Erdogan met two of the deputies from his own member of the parliament. Also, these guys, they're coming from the Islamist background and very pro-Iranian. They were discussing how could Erdogan, the prime minister at the time, allow this base open up in the southeastern part of Turkey. It is a threat to Iran. And Erdogan is saying to these guys, look, I don't have much power now. In 2010 we are talking. But when I get enough power one day, I know very well these Americans and the NATO guys are as much terrorists as Israel. I'm going to screw them up. This was in the judicial investigation file in Turkey, launched in 2010, and it went on for multi-year until 2013, when eventually Erdogan realized the investigation going on and they hushed it up. They dismiss all the investigators, prosecutors, judges, chief police officers who look into Iranian IRGC cells in Turkey over a year. Some of them actually tried to bomb the Israeli consulate in Istanbul. Some of them trying to, stage a bombing attack against the American consulate. It's a very hard evidence. 800 pages. I read it. It's amazing stuff, but that was hushed up. They was put aside. So all of those suspects, they fled Iran. So the marker is there back in 2010. Then, of course, 2013, we realized when another investigation became public in December 2013, Erdogan ordered the Turkish state banks to help out the Iranians, the IRGCs, to move money, to launder money. They were, sort of sending goods to Dubai, but on the paper. There was actually no good transportation at all. But it was, whitewashing the money, laundering the money. And it was exposed. The first reaction Erdogan did, this was a judicial coup. It wasn't an investigation. No, it was a lot of evidence, the wiretaps, the video footages, everything is there. But eventually he managed to hush it up, of course, and he secured the release of this key Iranian guy who later, Americans nabbed him, FBI in Miami. He later became a government witness. Erdogan managed to hush up the case in Turkey, but the case later on opened up in New York by the federal prosecutors, and the same evidence put it out there, and the deputy manager of the Turkish State Bank was convicted and served a time. But what happened afterwards, he served some time, went back to Turkey, but Erdogan rewarded him. He made him as a head of the stock exchange in Istanbul. That's the pattern of the behavior. He's rewarding these guys who did the dirty bidding on him, on behind of his government. So the markers there, Erdogan is building a new Iran in Turkey, and this is very dangerous. We need to be quite concerned about this development. You can see from the narrative perspective, it's almost similar to what the Iranian mullah are uttering. It's the same. Even with the narrative of the ISIS guys or the Al-Nusra Al-Qaeda affiliates, when you hear Erdogan speak, he basically, repeats the same narrative with a fine-tuning as sometimes bluntly he's saying. And just the other day he said, well, I have 4 million Syrian refugees as well as the ISIS captive guys in Turkish jails or the Syrian jails. I'm going to unleash them to Europe if you don't give what I want. So this is, of course, very concerning to a lot of people in Turkey and beyond Turkey. And the diaspora communities, not only the Turkish diaspora communities, by the way, in Sweden, in Germany, they have 3 million. They are investing a lot, the political, backing, the funding, the logistical support, all these, Islamist groups across Europe, in the United States and other parts of the world, acting as sort of long arm of the political Islamist regime in Turkey. And they are trying to undermine the established, societies. They're trying to mobilize themselves, sometimes forming as a political party in several parts of the Europe, sometimes as an NGO, but it's actually funded and supported and directed from the office of President Erdogan. So we need to be quite concerned about this development because Turkey is not a small country, it's a heavyweight. Perhaps it can inflict more damage than Iran and others. We don't see Turkey as a rational actor or state actor anymore. Erdogan government behaving more like a rogue nation. I mean, I don't remember any time in my past, I've been journalist for over 20 years, practically every month the American Treasury Department listing several Turkish companies and the individuals for aiding and abetting the ISIS and other Al-Qaeda terrorist groups. So the poison is there. The narrative is not only remaining on the rhetoric. The policy action is very forcefully, very strongly there. And the education-wise, I examined several books last month from at the high school level, you can see what Erdogan said in the public rallies, exactly repeated verbatim in these textbooks from K to 12. So a new generation coming up, raising a very, very, large political Islamist generation in Turkey, and that has a ramification beyond the Turkish borders, taking a toll in the societies we live in Europe, in America, and other places. So with that, I'm gonna cut it short, but I'll be happy to entertain the questions later on, if you have one.
De som vill får ställa frågor nu. Jag ställer fram stolar så att föredragshållarna kan sitta här, så får ni ställa frågor. Ni kan ställa frågor på svenska om det känns lättare. Det spelar ingen roll. Var är högtalaren? Vänta, du får.
Kan ni bara säga namn när ni frågar?
Ska jag sitta kvar eller? Ja. Jag heter Ingrid och jag skulle vilja fråga angående... Jag har en väninna som bor i Uppsala. Jag kan ge ett konkret exempel. Och hon är väldigt upprörd för att man ska bygga en moské utanför Uppsala. Och det är Dava-rörelsen är inblandad och flera politiker i kommunen i Uppsala har sagt ja och vill verkligen genomföra det här. Och hon har skickat väldigt mycket information till politikerna. Och hon säger nu att de vet om precis vad den här rörelsen handlar om. Men de kommer ändå legitimera och se till att den här moskén byggs. Så då har jag två frågor. Då skulle jag vilja fråga, vad kan vi göra? Hur kan vi agera, vi som inte vill att det sprids de här moskéerna runt om i Sverige? Och de människorna som bor i området, som är muslimer, de vill inte heller. De blir upprörda när de får höra att det ska byggas. Så det är alltså andra krafter som styr. Så kan ni säga också, berätta, vad är det för krafter som styr och hur har det här kommit in? Det är bland annat Socialdemokraterna som är väldigt engagerade och en centerpartist där som tydligen är helt pro den här moskén. Kan ni förklara det? Vad är bakgrunden? För det är väldigt... Jag som svensk förstår inte. Svenskar förstår inte. Kan ni förklara? Så vore det tacksamt.
Go ahead. Well, I don't know the specifics of the situation in there, but from the general perspective, I can say the mosques, as you know, as my friend mentioned in the presentation, in many times a sort of breeding ground for expansion and promotion of the political Islamist narrative, and sometimes bordering to the radical, militant movements as well. From the Turkish experience that I can relate to, almost 90,000 mosques in Turkey and 150,000 imams under the government payroll. They were transformed into proxies for the political Islamist government. They used to be a sort of benchmark or a barrier against the expansion of that, but all of a sudden these 90,000 mosques in Turkey, some in Europe as well, and some in America, they were sort of used by the political Islamists to expand their base. And Erdogan, for example, he was in the Washington, D.C. last week, meeting the Trump, and right after the meeting, he rushed to the Maryland, where his government built a major mosque complex in 2016. And he was addressing to the audience saying, well, this is a mosque as a center for all the American Muslims. It's not just the Turkish Muslims. So he's using the mosque funded by the government money as sort of infiltrating the political Islamist narrative into American Muslim society. Yes, there are Muslim groups who just want to pray, have a family gathering, community gathering. That's perfectly okay. You cannot oppose that. But you need to study the profile of the people, the group who are moving this idea, and who actually financing this, is raising from the community or from the foreign source. So a lot of red markers you can spot to identify what's really happening. So if you spot that, then of course you need to oppose it. But otherwise, if it's just for the small community group who just want to gather on Friday and have a tea and pray at the same time, that's perfectly okay. If you oppose that just because of the mosque, then you actually play into the hands of these political Islamist groups and the radical groups.
Victor, vi ska svara också.
I just have I will just confirm from my background on what my brother was just sharing, and for me is sometimes to build a center like that is worse than having a military group in the country, because the military group is obviously there, and I know that they are not the right people and we are against them. But the problem is when you have people who are acting that nothing is bad and everything is normal, and suddenly they are controlling the minds of people. So what I believe in we need to do is mainly many stuff, but I can just point some stuff. Again, we need to know who is financing, who is the leader, but also I believe that we need to revise the data, the content of the books and the libraries and the things that are said there, and I don't see that opposing to the freedom, because I don't have a problem that you record all my preachings in the church. I have no problem, because I know that it is very good for everyone and it's not attacking anyone. So, and I accept that. So we need to know what is really giving to people there. Yes. Please.
Well, I think I have a problem with that. And this is the thing with democracy, right? The idea is not to, a solid, mature democracy can handle that. You should not tape people in the mosques. I definitely, yeah, well, yeah, but that, I think that's a very slippery slope in a democracy. The thing here in Sweden and in other countries is, of course, that you have to look at are you really going to have it financed by public money? Well, maybe not, But if we can't handle Islamism by arguments, by a democracy, if we need to engage in repressive measures, then we have lost this fight. We should be strong enough to handle that without resorting to measures we will regret for the rest of our lives. So, the thing is to look at the financing. You can imply the regulations that we do have. Maybe we shouldn't, it's a basic in the US Constitution, separate religion from politics. It's really that easy. And we already have the laws for that in Sweden. We don't have to reinvent it. So maybe not publicly financed. If someone wants to build a mosque, you get all the permission, the permits you need, well, fine, you do that. You can't really stop that. But it shouldn't be publicly funded at all. And you have to look at if it's being financed from abroad. Abdullah was mentioning Turkey here, which is we could talk a lot about that, because that's a huge problem. You have to look at who's financing it, and maybe look at and say, well, actually that's not allowed here. You can't do that, because behind this is an ideology we don't want to support as a society. But do not use repressive measures here, because that's a very slippery slope, and you don't want to go down that road.
Let me just say a few things. My name is Victor, and I live in Uppsala, and I've actually lived in this neighborhood of Stenhagen, And I worked there also. I've been working there for 10 years. To not go into this, we have like liberal commentators like Sakine Madon, who has been very engaged against this. Jonas Segersam, who is a politician for Kristdemokraterna, and he is also president of Vänskapsförbundet in Uppsala. And he has been writing against this also in the local paper. But the thing is like this. There are laws in Sweden which the politicians, they are well aware of what is happening. And they might not agree with the DAVA group and their aim, but they cannot stand against this because there are laws for organizations, ideal organizations and buildings and stuff like that they have to bow to. The problem is we don't have laws against this. That is the problem.
Ja, Stefan Ritter. Jag har två frågor. Dels till Abdullah, en grej angående i Turkiet, och sen också en fråga till Thomas. När det gäller Turkiet, jag blev så förvånad, jag såg igår att Erdogan har gått ut och sagt, det man inte är van att se, så där helt utan hämningar, så sa han, vår religion beordrar oss att vara våldsamma mot de otrogna. Och vi ska visa våldsamhet. Och vi ska, alltså rena hot mot hela den icke-muslimska delen av mänskligheten. Sånt där brukar man inte höra så ofta. Och sen vill jag fråga Thomas, för jag kommer ihåg, du skrev väldigt bra och intressanta artiklar när det var debatt om böneutrop. Och talade om varför det var ingen bra idé att ha muslimska böneutrop. Kan du utveckla det lite?
Well, thank you for the question. If I understood correctly, you're absolutely right. The narrative, the rhetoric that we hear from President Erdogan, not just, by the way, in the last couple of weeks and a month, but across the years, it became more like, it sounds more an Al-Qaeda preacher speaking out to the rallies. But the danger, of course, with that, they use a telegram, very limited, media exposure. But Erdogan's speeches televised live in 24 TV outlets every day. So when he makes a speech, he sticks to the minds of the people of 82 million nation in Turkey. And later on, of course, this was repeated all over on the social media, YouTube and other places, translated into different, languages, and it became, take a huge toll. And Magnus, I think, absolutely right when he mentioned the narrative, the ideology part. That's how you carried in, the ideology with a narrative. That's the most difficult, part of this challenge. Yes, you can fight with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other jihadist group militarily, intelligence, capabilities and other police measures. Yes, you can do it. But I mean, if you only do that, you cannot succeed. Because if you use the military measures and the means, that means all the other avenues you failed, you exhausted. You need to have a strong counter-narrative to defeat this very dangerous ideology and make it very strong. And that's why you need to enlist the Muslims, that you can cooperate. That's one of the reasons why Erdogan actually came after the media groups in Turkey first, before destroying the institutions like judiciary, intelligence, the parliament and other institution checks and the balances. He wiped out entire critical, independent, and even the opposition media in Turkey, like 180 media outlets we are talking here, including the one that I used to work, the largest national daily in Turkey. He shut it down. He controls, he commands all the media landscape in Turkey, and he communicates this narrative. I counted 3 times in the last week alone, Erdogan was describing this Turkey-backed rebels in the northern part of Syria as a heroic jihadist. He called it openly. And he was, criticizing the Americans, the opposition parties in Turkey and Europe for, raising the issue with some of the group embedded with the Turkey-backed rebel groups, because we know they are remnants of the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other groups. They are still believing in this ideology. But Erdogan is saying, well, no, these are guys, heroes, fighting alongside with the NATO second largest army, the Turkish army, and doing the bidding of the political Islamist government in Turkey. This is absolutely horrifying part of the challenge, the narrative part. And unfortunately, I think we are losing that front. Militarily, you can crack down. They go underground. They lose the territory, but they're gonna pop up. You know what happened in Stockholm? Just one guy. He didn't have the weapons. IAD he had. It didn't explode, but he stole the truck. He mowed across the people. I mean, that's the motivation that, what kind of damage you can sustain with the ideology. It takes only one guy. He can inspired by, looking at these videos on YouTube, reading the, ideology or the books written by the Salafis and other jihadist people. So this is, I think, the most important challenge we need to focus.
Yes.
Säg ditt namn.
There were a question about the prayer call in speakers. Our problem was having them in speakers, not having them in general. Because as I said before, if you want to have them internally, you are free to your people to talk to them. But I don't see that I should have this identity and this proclamation every moment in my ears, and saying or arguing that people don't understand the language. For me, does mean nothing, because I understand Arabic. So when you say the words that shows that this is the right thing and this is the only thing, and I don't see this is needed. And then I argued also that you cannot satisfy all the needs in that sense, because there are needs that will come to conflict. Like, what if Buddhists wanted silence? Shall we destroy all the cars who give the horn in one moment because we want a moment of silence? I believe that as a country we should be out of that, and these things should be handled internally without opposing it to others. At least this is how I see it. You cannot imagine it's in Egypt how it is to hear in 5 a.m. in the morning the prayer call in speakers that make you jump out of your bed. No, why should I live like that? Yes. Actually, there is a hadith also that says that Muhammad used not to attack a country that has the prayer call raising up, because this shows that Islam is there in having a control. This was a quote from Abdullah al-Jubair from Saudi Arabia in his commentator on the book on the part of prayer call. So also, why should I have such identity all the time? I like more to have a civil public square, as I like to call it. Not Muslim, not Christian, not Jews, just a civil public square where we all meet together.
My name is Tarald. I'm a Norwegian living happily in Sweden last 19 years. I think I've heard, and I think I'm right in what I have heard, that the nature of Islam is to govern, not to be governed. It is to rule self, not to be ruled of others. So, if this is right, I think it is. The question is logical. It's very unpopular, very dangerous in Sweden, but the question is, will all our Muslim, Islam organizations, etc., as time goes by, undermine other systems, political systems, religious systems? Will they take over?
Other systems take over, or Islam take over?
Will they, because it is the nature of Islam to rule, they are on a higher level, and we are on a lower level. Will they, well, take over is maybe it's too much, but will they, as time goes by, dominate? Maybe you are dominate. Because they are Islam.
Yeah, the mic in my hand, I'll start answering. It's already there, so sorry guys. In my opinion, it depends on how much you will focus on managing the relation and the rights of Muslims and organizations inside the country. I believe that people are sometimes handling the idea with the religious idea in a way that allow or give opportunities for them to go to that direction, because it happens slowly. If I open back the page where I say what they do today, let me give you an example in Egypt. For example, if Salafism is not existing in a specific area, we don't conquer, it's in Egypt. If it's not popular there, what we do is we try first to go into the mosque, and then we try to be more into the mosque, and then we take over the control in the mosque. Then the speech will be changing in the mosque, and then we will have a group of people who are believing in what we say, and we will have more people, and then we are more, and we are in control. So things happen more smooth than you think. It will not happen by going outside and say, no more, you go leave. No, it will happen smoothly, so it depends on how you will manage it, in my opinion.
All right, can I just comment on that? Since I'm a political scientist, I really can't avoid this. And I think we need a civic course in democracy here. You know, it's that easy. You separate religion from politics. All religions are compatible with democracy, and no religions are compatible with democracy. I mean, God damn it! It's a matter of how you treat it. You know, of course they're not going to take over. What is this? Are you going to close down democracy? You know, it's not. We already have Jesus. It's how long since we had the Enlightenment? 250 years. Maybe we need that again, because we already have the laws on the books here. It's not a problem, okay? It's in our heads and it's in our hearts. We can deal with this if we are a mature democracy. It's not going to take over. You know, there is a solid, mature democracy can handle this. A democracy can handle this if you separate religion from politics. You know, it's a question of how much you allow this to happen. You don't have to worry about it as long as there is a mature, secure democracy here. You know, it's not a question of undermining or underplaying the threat, but it's a thing to handle, you know, a Western democracy. At its base, it's a damn good thing, you know, and it worries me a lot when people all of a sudden think or saying that, well, you know, maybe it's not that strong. Then it will lose. You know, it's no better than, you know, the weakest link in the chain. But it's not. It's something we already have dealt with many hundreds of years ago. We shouldn't lose that. It's already here.
Can we give England
the UK?
I mean, because just adding. No, I mean, on some places, because like I see in some places in London, as far as I hear from my colleagues who work there in the ministry, that in some places they started to give up their own laws, and they started to say, okay, let's have a parallel law, let's have this other court in parallel. These people are people who are giving up what they have to...
That's not an issue for democracy per se. It's a question of how you deal with it.
Yeah, this is what I say.
Strong enough, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's why I started my talk. I said, this is how you deal with it, and I'm giving that just an example for misusing or bad using of what you really have, which is good. I'm just confirming. You want to answer?
Just a quick note then. we have more questions. I agree with Magnus on this point, with one caveat from the experience that we had in Turkey. We used to believe our institutions are strong enough, democratic institutions, checks and the balances, accountability, transparency with all the challenges and the problems that we had before. But we were wrong. The only lesson that I can draw, you need to keep fighting for your democracy, for your values each and every day. Don't take it for granted. When I look at what's happening in America now, I see a lot of similarities, what we had gone through already. So that's the only message I can relate. But overall, I think the democratic institutions should be strong enough to survive all these challenges, and you need to separate the religion from the politics.
Yeah. My name is Helena, and my question is probably we'll start with Magnus. My question is about the Swedish Islamic party called Nuance. They are going to run for Riksdagen during the next elections. They have already collected all the bureaucratic stuff, signatures, certificates, etc. So they will be running. And most probably their leader now is some quite unknown politician, but most probably their leader before the elections will be Mehmet Kaplan. And so the question is, what are we going to do? Because they will enter Riksdagen. That is out of the question. I mean, it's obvious. Huh?
You know something I don't.
Oh, okay. That's the first question, and the second question, or the follow-up question, is, how are we going to deal with that? Because, and do you believe that Muslim Brotherhood will back them? Because I'm sure they will. Do you believe that? And what's your take on that? How can you comment, and what should we expect, actually? And what could be done?
Well, that was at least 10 different questions. What exactly is it you're asking me?
I'm asking you how you see the next elections with the Islamic Party.
Right, and how successful they may be.
How many seats?
Yeah. Well, I'm not I'm not going to speculate on that, but I think I agree with you that they have a good chance. Maybe not entering the parliament, but locally, I think they're gonna get some heavy support in certain areas. But see, this is the thing with democracy. You're actually allowed to start new parties. You're actually allowed to do that. It's the essence of a good democracy that this is gonna happen. It doesn't worry me. What worries me is that if we, as Abdullah was pointing out there, if we give up on it, right? It shouldn't be a real problem at all, and they do have that right. If enough people think it's this is really good, they're going to vote for them, and that's it. So I don't really see. I think it's not going to be. It's going to be a problem for some parties. It's going to be a problem for the Social Democrats. It's going to be a problem for the Greens. It's going to be a problem for the Left Party probably, because for them the Islamic vote has been very important. Now all of a sudden there is a party who says, now we're the real thing, we're Islamism 2.0, and that may very well be a pretty successful way of doing it. So I think they're going to enter a number of local counties. I'm not so sure about getting into the parliament. It's a long haul in Sweden to do that, but the jury is still out on that. But I think that can be pretty successful because there is a voting bloc out there who may think that, well, actually, this is a Muslim guy. He started a party for us. I'm going to vote for him. And the interesting thing is that this is a fine irony. This is a fine irony indeed. The reason the present political parties has sort of gone out of their way sometimes to get what they call the Muslim vote, which is silly, because the idea is that there is such a thing as a Muslim vote. Yeah, for the Muslim Brotherhood and for the Islamists, you know, that's music to their ears. But for any sane democratic person, it's stupid, you know. There is no such thing unless you make it into such a thing. And if you all of a sudden look at a number of people and say, hey, your identity is Muslim, I don't care what kind of, which is, it goes against the grain of a parliamentary democracy, which is where the parties are idea-based. It doesn't really matter what you believe in or if you don't believe at all. This is how this country and Western democracy was built. All of a sudden, you have a number of parties, idea-based parties, switching 180 degrees and say, hey, there's a number of Muslims over there. Let's try to get their vote, you know. That's a slippery slope. Now, there's payback time. So in a sense, you know, you can, it will make me laugh in a sense, because they will lose by someone being more radical than themselves. They're going to lose the votes they were trying so hard to get because they really want the real thing, you know. And that's going to be interesting. That was a long answer, but it's an interesting question.
Luay Ahmed heter jag, men jag talar på engelska. First, I would like to ask a question to Magnus and then another question to Samuel. Because Magnus, you said something about taping mosques being repressive measures, and it's against democracy. But the thing is, Islam is a totalitarian religion which dictates everything that people should do and dominates over countries. For example, in Lebanon was 40% Muslims. And then when Muslims became more than 50%, civil wars crashed, and today Lebanon has become an Islamic country. I don't know if you know this, but according to Pew Research, in 2050, Sweden is going to be 30% Muslims. And what's going to happen when they use the democracy that you love so much and start Islamicizing Sweden? So I want to understand how you feel about the repressive measures, if like taping.
Look,
mosques.
it's the law, right? It's the law. You can't tape sermons in a mosque or a church unless unless there is the police says there is maybe a crime committing or something like that. You can't just go in and tape sermons in mosques, and that shouldn't be possible unless there is suspicion of a crime. And even if you say, the Pew Research study you mentioned, I haven't really seen that one, but so what? Even if 30% of this country are Muslims, do you think they're all going to vote for the same thing?
Yes. Well, like Mr. Samuel said, he said something about how when it comes to a Muslim, they psychologically want the Sharia.
No.
So if you put a Muslim and ask them, would you vote for Nyans or Socialdemokraterna at times where there is tension, they will most likely vote for the country that says we will stand for the Muslims' rights. But another thing, you mentioned something about enlightenment. I come from Yemen. I come from a Muslim country. These two gentlemen that sit next to you come from Muslim countries. We have not gone through the Enlightenment. There is not a single Muslim country that you can say, I'm not a Muslim in and not be persecuted for. In Yemen, Iraq, Syria, if you say, I leave Islam, you get the death penalty. So it's not an enlightened religion as you claim it to be. So
I'm not claiming it. I said that we should need enlightenment back in Sweden and remember what we built this country on. That's what I said.
Right, but I don't agree. I don't think Islam is enlightened yet. It has to be enlightened where it is, and then we can respect it and democratize it here. But my next question is to Mr. Samuel. As you can see, Sweden is like dominated by political correctness. You feel like the Vikings have died a long time ago, and now you're like met with this kind of like, no, we don't want to, you know. So if we would put you, who's very knowledgeable about Islam, instead of Stefan Löfven, the prime minister that doesn't know anything about Islam or Islamism. He's even said that I'm never going to criticize Islam because it's a beautiful religion and it's a part of Swedish culture. So What would you do? What are the things that you would do to minimize Islam's impact in Sweden when we know that 30% of Sweden is going to become Muslim, when we know that youths, when they come to Sweden, because Sweden is extremely segregated, especially in housings, that the youths end up being on the street or in the mosque, which ends up radicalizing a lot of the Muslim youths that happen to be in Sweden. What are the measures that you would take as a prime minister to limit this radicalization?
Wow. That's a tough question, because I never imagined myself as a prime minister at all. I don't know if you have seen even the very pure political questions I didn't comment on because I am not a politician, and yeah, this is me. And that's why I encounter the idea of politics from a theological perspective. However, I have two main points. The first point, I still want to comment again about the idea of voting. And I have very interesting video that if you bear 2 minutes, would you bear 2 minutes video? 2 or 3 minutes video. But this would reflect, this is not from a restricted country, not from Egypt, not from Turkey. It's from, I think, Indonesia or Malaysia, a place that is full of Muslims, but very, they are not that hard core. So let's, if you allow me, before answering your part of the Prime Minister, but I would like to share this video with you. And it is in English, so this video is for someone very well-known Muslim apologist called Zakir Naik. He's very well-known, and he was asked actually directly that question about voting in Islam. And the guy who was asking was very not Salafi. I can promise you he's not Salafi, not Brotherhood. He's a very simple, normal Muslim guy. And this is what he heard when he asked the question.
What happens to the Muslim brothers or Muslim sisters who happen to live in a foreign country that do not have any Muslim candidates in the elections?
Very good. I said that if you have a choice between a Muslim and a non-Muslim based on the verse of the Quran, you have to choose a Muslim. What will happen to those Muslims living in non-Muslim countries where both the candidates are non-Muslim? That's a very good question. All the verses in the Quran where Allah speaks about choosing, whether it be Surah Ma'idah chapter 5 verse 51, whether Surah Imran chapter 3 verse 28, or Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse number 144, all the places it says that Lord, let not the believers take the unbelievers in preference to a believer, as the awliya, as the friend, as the protector, as the supporters. That means whenever there's a choice between a Muslim and non-Muslim, for being a supporter, a protector, you have to choose a Muslim, without doubt. There's no option for that. And I've given the answer in detail in my other talks and question answer session. But a basic question is, what happens if a Muslim is living in a non-Muslim country? And both the leaders are non-Muslim. Who do you choose? You choose, if both are non-Muslim, you choose a Muslim that is following more of the Quran and Sunnah between the two. So between the two, you choose the lesser evil. If both are non-Muslim, you will have to try and find out which non-Muslim you select will be following closer, if not everything, closer to Quran Sunnah. Similarly, if both are Muslims, who do you choose? If both are Muslims standing for election, you choose a Muslim which is closer to Quran Sunnah. You don't choose a Muslim who will be rich, who will give you more money, he will give you housing. You choose a Muslim that is closer to Quran and Sunnah, the teachings of the glorious Quran and the Sahih Hadith. In both the cases, whether both are Muslims or both are non-Muslims, if both are non-Muslims, you choose the lesser of the evil. If both are Muslims, you choose the person who's better and closer to Quran and Sunnah. Hope.
This is in university, not in a mosque. Okay? So simply he's saying you choose in your voting based on one rule, which is the one who is following Quran and Sunnah. And if both are Muslims. If both are non-Muslims, you choose the one who is doing favor to Muslims. And don't choose the one who make you rich. Don't choose the one who give you housing. Don't choose the one who help you. Choose the one who follow. And really, this is a video that a part of the lecture. You know, if you hear the full thing, he's going into details. He's saying even if you have really this, you can go back. It's on internet. Okay, go to it back and say you are wrong. No problem. He is saying in the rest of the video, he's saying, what if I have a non-Muslim and a Muslim who is a thief? It's better for you to choose the Muslim who is a thief over a non-Muslim who will not steal you. This is what he's saying in the video. Okay? And this is an apologist giving in university. What I want to say, I'm just reflecting what will be happening in the situation where we have these problems, or when we have this voting problem. It's very dangerous, and my wish will be that we don't reach there. Shortly about the thing of the Prime Minister, which is still, I'm trying to imagine myself as this one, but which is really hard. I believe that one thing I will do, or a few things, but mainly I will open it to be a more discussion out there, in the sense of more debates and arguments in front of everyone. And I will get the other opinion of people who started Islam well and let them talk in front of people. So when we give the people the right to choose, we give them a right portion. And that's maybe the only thing I would like to comment on Magnus' opinion, that it's the thing is, or the problem, that sometimes people will choose not based on knowledge. They will choose based on what they receive. I cannot force that to change, like force people to say some stuff. But what I can do is, let's put it out more. Let's both dig it down and see if this is really what it is. When you come for me, for example, and say, Islam is not trying to have control at all, and it's not a religion of empowerment, then you have to answer a lot of questions about that. And then people should choose, because then I'm a prime minister. I cannot force people. You should, you know. My opinion here is different. But people should stand up for what they think, for what they believe in. What I worry in a country like Sweden, that we are losing a little bit the base and the arguments on why we are like that. I don't know, maybe 2 generations backward it was not like that, or 1 generation back, I don't know. But today, people are losing the base, why it should be this way, why it should be this law. What's the argument for it? Why it's not another? Why it should be one law? Why we should not have a Sharia court for people? And as a country, I should have not to do anything with that, and for me, marriage should have the part of the papers, and I don't care what you do in your mosque, in your marriage. I should not be involved. But do we still have these bases, and we understand, and we can argue for our laws? This is something Swedes should decide, not me. Yeah, please. As a Prime Minister.
No, I'm not a Prime Minister. I'm not hoping to be. I just want to, caution you guys. When we watched the video, this Indian Zaika is a well-known radical preacher. He actually, in the initial years of the conflict in Syria, supported jihad and the CCR bombing, and there's an outstanding warrant against him in India. He was denied entry to UK and a number of the Western countries. He backed out some of the rhetoric he did before, but he comes and goes to Turkey. We know him very well. He's in company of Erdogan. But he doesn't represent the mainstream Muslim community. With all the power the Erdogan government, the political Islamist has in Turkey, still 50% of the population opposing him in the election. That's very, sizable figure. So, I mean, we need to be very careful in our narrative while we are criticizing the narrative and the rhetoric of the political Islamists. Stay away from the scaremongering. A lot of Muslims, just practicing. They don't care about, this 5% of the rules and the regulation in Islam that deal with the governance issue. Mostly, they are just practicing, inner self-development, 5 or 10%. But still, I mean, I have different opinion on that. Just a quick note on one research that's done by two academics, I think one from the Oxford. He actually applied a lot of Islamic values, principles to the Islamic countries and the Western democracies. None of the Islamic countries actually came any closer to top 50 in that list. A lot of corruption, human rights violation, all these things actually opposed by Islam. But they are being committed in a wide scale in my country and in other, predominantly Muslim countries. Why do you think so many Muslims are fleeing from their own countries? In many cases, of course, there's a conflict going on, but in also some cases, they are, escaping from the dictatorship. They want to protect their own rights. They want to live freely. They want to, express themselves freely, as well as they want to practice, their religion or faith or which variation of Islam they have in the societies they live in. So there's a very fine line here. If you want to fight against this radical ideology, then you need to be treading very carefully here. So that's my caveat.
So my name is Joachim, and my question is primarily to Magnus, but also to all three of you, regarding, like the previous speaker here, about repressive measures. If we disregard repressive measures, what can we do? Because people are losing faith in democracy as we know it, because as we all know, the Swedish Democrats are now at 24%, and Moderaterna are down to 17%, so people are losing faith. And what we see in Uppsala, for example, where the politicians actively support this Dava Center, lies the answer in journalistic opinions to spread these happenings, or how do we confront these problems if we disregard these repressive measures? Because I know there are reformist Muslims who are very well regarded in society. The name escapes me now, but I know there is reformist movements within Islam. So should we promote that? Should we encourage that more? Or what is the answer? Because I don't really trust the Sweden Democrats, to be honest. I don't know what they will do, and I want to know specifically how can we prevent these things like the Dava Center if we completely disregard repressive measures?
Well, that's a $10 million question for you there. Who was it? Roosevelt who said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I think the democracy dies when people stop keeping faith in it. You're absolutely right, and that's my fear too. Because at the end of the day, basically, it should be strong enough to deal with these issues, of course. And the thing is, I'm repeating myself, but the point of a parliamentary democracy like the one we have here, based on ideas, right? Where we don't care of what you believe in, not believing in, the color of your skin, what else. It shouldn't matter at all. The thing is that if you keep to that, you know, the basics here, it is strong enough to deal with these issues. But it's going to lose if we start looking at people as collectives. You know, we're talking about the idea of calling, you know, who is a Muslim here? I mean, you say you can say Muslims is a person who believes in the 5 pillars of Islam. That's about it. The same goes for all religious traditions here. If, the Jewish tradition or the Christian tradition. If you clump them together as one group, you've lost. But that shouldn't be. That we do that to ourselves, right? So what I'm saying is that you deal with it by have faith in this, you know, in yourself for the basics of democracy, because that does separate religion from politics. No system is safe in that sense, but you need to keep that in it. You know, the basics, because the basics are there already. We don't have to reinvent this. We've done this already. Smoking now? All right. We don't have to reinvent this. It's there already. And the thing is not to collectivize people. Stop looking at people as a group just because, like Muslims or Christians or what have you. As soon as you do that, as soon as you lose sight of individuals, you've lost. Democracy is dead. And this is self-inflicted. We don't have to do this. We just, and the way to deal with the threat, as the woman here was talking about, of nuance, is to, well, so what? You know, they have every right to compete in these elections, as much rights as everybody else. You deal with it by arguing against it, like we've been doing since John Stuart Mill or Thomas Jefferson's. It's not. We don't have to reinvent this. We already know how to do this. It's just that we lost sight of it, maybe. I agree with that. You know, I'm also worried for you know, the democracy in this country, because we've lost our cojones to some extent here. You know, we need to sort of rediscover them. Sorry about that. But I think you know, but the point is, it's already there. We don't have to reinvent it. We just have to remember it. You know, that's how you fight it. You fight it, as Abdullah was saying here, it's a narrative that's dangerous if you lose sight of that. The war is the easy one. You know, everyone can send in the 82nd Airborne, and you know, there's no Islamic State any longer. But to fight the ideas. So yes, when I wrote Return of the Caliphate, that was the point of the book. You know, that number of people, brave people like Abdullah here, you know, in the Middle East, saying, hey, this Islamic State people, it's our problem, you know. We need to deal with it. Those were the voices I wanted to raise. Those are the people we're going to support. Not playing into the hands of the Islamists by branding, you know, 1 billion people. Oh, they're Muslims. 30% Muslims in this country. What are we going to do? We're not going to do anything. We have a good democracy here. We can handle this. That's it. Yeah, I'm sure.
My name is Nina, and I'm a scholar and a teacher of history of religions. And it's clear, everybody knows that Islam per se is its practice and interpretation is not democratic, and it has remained in antique and medieval vision of the world and of men and women. And there is one utterly important aspect that we haven't touched this evening, is about the women, because Islam is how should I put it? Today in Sweden, in the Swedish society, there are Muslim schools, there are parallel systems how young people, boys and girls, are brought up to regard women and men in different ways. And that is an ongoing problem. It has, because if we don't open our eyes, if we don't stop shutting our eyes, there will be things going on which is already a problem. Magnus is talking about that we are in a democratic year and we're in a democratic country. The question, the crucial question is not what is going to happen in 20 or 30 years. And I'm sure that Islam is not going to dominate the Western countries. But the Islamic way of regarding the half population of the globe, the women, girls and women, is already a terrific big problem that we shouldn't avoid discussing. And that is politics. When in Sweden, the government chooses to close their eyes when girls and women are treated in this way. I'm talking about what you called it, cultural violence, hedersvåld, hedersrelaterat våld. Yeah, and that's already politics, and it is also politics if we don't do nothing practical about it. So I would like to ask you, as a Swede, how can you say that we live in a democracy? Perhaps you and I do it, but many people in Sweden don't. And I'm thinking of the girls and the women who are not regarded as human beings with the same human rights as men have. So how are you? What are your reflections about how we are going to solve that problem? Because Swedish schools are today emerged by this schizophrenic way of regarding the humans, the young people.
Right. Yeah, it goes back to what we've been talking about earlier, what I was saying earlier. If you want to treat people equal, men and women equal, you already have that, that structure. I agree with you that if you lose that structure, if you allow it to be undermined by sort of private schools, for instance, or religious schools, then we have the problem here with it that you're mentioning. But the point is that that's what I'm saying. We need to rediscover the roots here, because we already have that structure that safeguards what you're after here. So and and to use that, we're not using it. I agree with you there. There shouldn't be. I'm very critical towards religious schools as such. Schools should not be religiously based at all. None of them. Because that should be a safe space, if you like, for kids. And if you do have them, you have to make sure that there's no change in the basic structures at all. But the thing is, you don't have to reinvent this, because we already have that. What you have to reinvent, in a sense, or rediscover, is those basic structures that we do have here in Sweden. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's not a question of changing the laws or anything. Well, maybe it is. I think still in the sense that you should be critical towards religiously based schools, not in the sense that the structures is not there already. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm against. Religiously based schools.
And then we have to change the government. The government has to change the laws in Sweden.
Not the laws. The law that says that you can have a religiously based schools.
Yeah. For example, there are many other examples, because Sharia is now ruling not your life, not my life, because I'm not a Muslim. I'm a Jewish woman, but. Young Muslim girls and women are ruled by that's the biggest threat. It's not that we Swedes are going to be dominated or by Muslims. I'm not afraid of that, not at all, even if terrorism scares me. But the problem is the Muslim population in Sweden, young people, children who are who are brought in different ways, which are not according to the human rights.
No, the problem is that official Swedish authorities have allowed a tiny percent of people, they've allowed them to become the spokesperson for Islam. You know, they've allowed people from the Muslim Brotherhood, for instance, they've allowed Islamists to say, hey, we can tell you what Muslims like. That's the problem.
Before I say thank you to everybody, I want to say just something in this matter, because I don't fully agree with you and I'm a bit disturbed, because I think that we have had Jewish schools for time immemorial, sort of, and they have not been taught to sit on different sides.
No, but they're ethnically based, not religiously based. That's a
And we
difference.
have Christian schools, and there has been no problem. So I'm a bit disturbed that as soon as we have the Muslim schools where there's problem, we are to shut down all the religious schools. I don't buy that, but I'm sorry, but we can have different. We can discuss it later on. So I'm sorry that I said that, but I stand for what I say, and I'm very firm. So, but I will say thank you to you all, and it was very nice to have you here. It was a pleasure, and we are going to do more debates and things like this in the future. We have more things planned, so I hope you can be back within, well, I think it's been the next year, because we have the Hanukkah for everyone who is here. We have Hanukkah, and we have a very special person who is being given, will be given the Segerstedt Prize. And he is a fantastic guy, not living in Sweden, but doing a lot for the Jewish community and for Israel, as this is our mission. We are working as Sweden-Israel society. And he is going to be honored that night, and it's going to be a fantastic Chanukah. And we have a new chef, the 18th of December, and we have a new chef in town, and that's going to be exciting. Udi is going to make the food, so I think you're going to enjoy it. So welcome back, everybody, the 18th of December. Thank you.